Welcome to Frickin' History. When I think about Lincoln, I always think about what if. What if he hadn't been unalived? What if he'd have been around for Reconstruction? What if? So let's take a look at Lincoln and his leadership during the Civil War era and how it changed over time. Remember, if you want a 3, a 4, or a 5 on your AP exam, I'm the guy to see. So Lincoln had run that he was going to not mess with slavery in the South, to keep it as it is. He just didn't want it expanding. So when the secession of the southern states started to occur, he was really looking at how do we hold the Union together? That was the goal. But it changed. It changed over that time. Now, Lincoln, you have to understand, used to write a lot, and he would keep ideas, like he would keep it in his top hat when he was putting speeches together, etc. He was always in thought. So after the Battle of Antietam, he decided that timing with that victory, and it was a very slight victory, and I mean very little. His idea was, this is our chance to start to reframe how we look at this war, and he could not get away from the emancipation of the enslaved. So by executive order, the Emancipation Proclamation was released January 1st, 1863, and really changed the way the war was seen. He understood that without the removal of slavery from the Union, it was going to be a continuous issue that he could never get away from. Now, understand the emancipation was for the states in rebellion. That's the piece you got to remember. So all the states that went and seceded, those are the slaves. Now, granted, most of them were there, but they did not attach that to the border states, which were key for Lincoln and having and ensuring the victory and making sure that they did not leave and join the Confederacy, which would have hurt the Union's cause. What did this lead to? There were slaves that left the plantations, that ran, and more African Americans started to join the Union Army to fight for their cause and their freedom, which is not the first time. Not the first time this idea of African Americans fighting what they believed was going to be for their freedom. But the emancipation made it look a lot different. Now, the second thing that Lincoln did that really changed the way the war was seen was the Gettysburg Address. After the Battle of Gettysburg in 1863, it was a brutal battle, which the Union was able to not only be victorious, but then forced Robert E. Lee and his army of Virginia out of the North, and they were never to return. And so Lincoln was asked to give an address, and there wasn't a lot of notice, so he didn't have a lot of time to really work on his speech. And again, when he was working on these speeches, it would be over time. He might consult his spiritual advisor. He had a pastor that he would talk to. He would have little ideas, and he'd write down, and he'd put them in the top of his hat, and he'd hold on to them and kind of start piecing them together over time. But he did not have a lot of leeway based on all the documents that are laid out as far as giving the Gettysburg Address. So he was making a plea to the American ideals and reaching back to our framers and the founders for inspiration to get through and reframe the righteousness of the Civil War. 77 years ago, our fathers brought forth this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. He's going back to Jefferson. He's reaching back. All men are created equal. He talks about being engaged in this Civil War and how the men, the living and the dead, both have given so much. He's saying that the history books may not remember the people that died there, but it was the living that was going to keep it alive and advance from this point moving forward. And he continued. He said that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this new nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish this earth. Lincoln's shortest speech, one of his shortest speeches ever, one of the most powerful ones, reaching back to the framers, gives me chills every time I read that, because he knew what was at stake. And now you know your freaking history.